Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Sara, Ganeian, and I'm just so excited to be here tonight. I'm extremely passionate about educating people and empowering them to take an active role in creating their health and being partners with their physicians in their treatment plans. I'm going to give you an overview of what I'm going to cover tonight. I'm going to start by telling you guys my story and why I'm so passionate about this, because I want you to know that you have power over your health and take ownership over your health. And then I'm going to talk about the microbiome. That's why everybody's here tonight. I'm going to talk about the probiotics, prebiotics, what influences the microbiome, and talk about the relationship between gut health and mental health. So tonight, the main thing that we're going to talk tonight is the microbiome. However, I need to speak of hygiene hypothesis for a little bit before talking about the microbiome. So in the early 1900s, a doctor in the UK noticed that his patients that lived on farms that were exposed to animals, that had more siblings, didn't get as sick as the kids in the city from the affluent families. And he came up with this theory that the early exposure to germs help build the kids' immune systems. So the hypothesis, this theory was going on, and actually in 1989, David Sargent formed a hypothesis called the hygiene hypothesis, which states if you're exposed to germs early in life, you have a stronger immune system. You don't struggle with allergies or eczema or any skin issues. So that's how the whole idea of microbiome started. Now, microbiome by itself is a new concept, but germs have been with us forever, since the beginning of time. But it's only been 10 years since doctors and researchers talking about the microbiome. So what are the microbiome? They're a collection of viruses, bacteria, fungi, and all of them live in our gut together. There is about 100 trillion of them in our body. Their DNA outnumbers our DNA by 100 to 1. So there's a lot. So I think in essence, you can tell that we're more bacteria than human. They do a lot of stuff for us. They digest our food, they make vitamins, they balance our hormones. When they're in dysbiosis, when we have more bad bacteria than good bacteria, they can lead to autoimmunity, even obesity. So they do a lot of stuff for us. And in return, all they ask for is to be fed. That's all they want. They want the right food to do what they want to do. So we have two types to make it very simple. Of course, it's not as simple as this, but there are good bacteria and bad bacteria in our gut. And when the balance is off, that's called dysbiosis. And dysbiosis is what leads to a lot of the digestive issues that we're dealing with today, such as SIBO, IBS, autoimmune disorders, even Alzheimer's, and obesity, depression, anxiety. They can all, and at the end of the session tonight, I'll talk about the research that just came out this week about depression and linking it to the gut microbiome. It was just published this week. So what affects our microbiome? The biggest thing that affects our microbiome is diet. People always ask me what diet I recommend, what diet they should be on. And I always have the same answer. I'm diet agnostic. I don't believe in any one diet, one certain diet. I believe in bio-individuality, and what diet works for me may not work for you, or at different stages in our lives, the same diet doesn't work. However, every diet, every good diet has some guidelines. And the number one guideline for a good diet is that they're whole foods. Now, what do I mean by that? Whole foods, like if a food was made in nature or by God, it's good for you. If it was made in the factory, not so much. Think of sweet potatoes. They're good for you. Sweet potato chips, not so much. Apples are good for you. Applesauce, not so much. And apple juice is definitely not good for you. And the list goes on. So when I tell my clients, when they ask me, I'm like, just think about if God made it or if it was made in a factory. And that gives you a pretty good idea of what's good for you and what's not. The second thing that all good diets have in common is fiber. So we need fiber in our diet because our gut microbiome, they live on fiber. So that's something that you have to have. Let me give you an example. There is a tribe in Tanzania called the Hadza tribe. It's a modern day hunter-gatherer tribe. And the researchers noticed that they don't suffer from any digestive issues. So they went there and they studied them, they observed them, and they noticed that they have at least 100 grams of fiber a day. And they didn't have any digestive issues. Now, let me put that in perspective. They came back to the US and they did a research at the healthiest of population, the one that ate the healthiest food. And they only had about 20 grams of fiber in their diet. So you can see how that can cause dysbiosis because our genes were not evolved not to have fibers. Our microbiome was evolved to have fibers, and the industrialization of our diet within the past 100 years has changed everything because we have stripped our foods from fiber. So there's no fiber in our foods, and that could create an issue. So that's the second big issue. The third thing that all good diets have in common is that they're low in sugar, because sugar feeds the bad bacteria that leads to dysbiosis. So a low sugar diet is a good diet. And then the last thing that all good diets have in common is high fat, high good fat. I'm talking about avocado fat, coconut oil fat, or olive oil. I'm talking about that kind of fat. So all of the good diets have that in common. Then the second group of things that affect the microbiome is medication. Now, antibiotics top that list. Of course, I'm glad that we live in a time that we do have access to antibiotics. I mean, if you're having a serious infection or surgery, of course you need antibiotics. But the overuse of antibiotics in our society has led to dysbiosis. And I know that's what caused my son to have all those issues, because he was on antibiotics for about 5 months, right before his issues started because of an ear infection. So antibiotics are a huge issue that can lead to dysbiosis. The second class of drugs that can lead to dysbiosis are anti-inflammatory drugs, such as Advil, Motrin, that can lead to dysbiosis. But the third class of drugs that are absolutely the worst are the PPIs, things that you take for acid reflux, the medication that you are taking for acid reflux, that can cause dysbiosis. I remember about 10 years ago, I was doing a research on the PPIs, and I came across this article that when they first came out in the 1980s, the drug reps would tell the doctors that this is a really potent drug and it shouldn't be used for more than 6 weeks. Now, I know personally patients that have been on it for years, and that just kills off your good bacteria, because our stomach, we need acid, stomach acid, to digest our food. So when our food is not digested, that can cause not only dysbiosis, but nutrient deficiencies. So you can't absorb your vitamin Bs, your calcium, vitamin C. And actually there's a direct link between prolonged use of PPIs and osteoporosis, because you just can't absorb calcium. So I always tell my clients, make sure when you're given a medication that the temporary benefit outweighs the long-term risk. Ask your doctors. I wish I had asked mine when my son was put on antibiotics for such a long time. We would have avoided that whole year of, going from doctors to doctor, hospital to hospital. Take ownership of your own health. When you're giving a medication, don't take it, without asking, without questioning it, without researching it. But those are the drugs that affect the gut microbiome the most. Now, the next thing that affects the gut microbiome is stress. Stress has a big effect on microbiome. It's from the time, we wake up, we're bombarded with being stuck in traffic, being late at work, dropping kids off at school. We're just bombarded with stress. And God forbid you turn on the news or open your social media these days. It's just, and that's the only thing on my list that's completely unavoidable. Like you can't, if you live here, you can't avoid stress. So you have to look for ways to manage your stress. And there are ways, stress, managing stress is also by individual. For me, walking helps. I walk every morning at sunrise for 45 minutes. No matter what the temperature is, I've been doing that for years. And that helps me calm down and start my day. There are breathing techniques that I teach my clients that when a stressful situation arises, to take 5 minutes out and breathe. So that's something to keep an eye on. Then your microbiome loves movement. They love when you're moving your body. Now, you don't have to have a gym membership. That's not what I'm talking about. Attaching movement to what you do every day really matters to make it a habit. For example, if you're making coffee or you're making tea in the morning, while waiting for the water to boil or while waiting for the coffee to be prepared, just do 10 squats, 10 jumping jacks. You don't have to do an hour of movement or 2 hours at the gym. You can take 5 minutes here and there. And I teach my clients to attach it to something that they're already doing. Just attach that to something you're already doing. And after a month to 6 weeks, it becomes a habit. Like when you're talking on the phone, don't take the phone call sitting down. Just walk while you're talking. Or if you have a desk job and you're on your computer, every hour, just stand up and walk for 5 minutes or do 20 jumping jacks or whatever that's within your ability. Just move your body. Then the next step that we can talk about is sleep. That's a very important one. I used to only get 2 hours of sleep, and I used to pride myself out. Yeah, I'm functional with only 2 hours of sleep. But then it hit me really, really hard. I even started wearing an Oura ring, which measures my sleep, my REM sleep, my deep sleep, because I'm so strict about getting enough sleep every night. we were evolved with circadian rhythm. So we live in a time that's really weird. Like the electricity is a new concept. Blue light is even a more recent concept. But our genes were evolved to wake up with the sun and to go to bed with the sunset. And so our microbiome have their own circadian rhythm. So when you wake up, your microbiome wakes up. When you go to sleep, your microbiome goes to sleep. That's a new area of research that's very, very exciting. And that's something that we all have to be mindful about, like going to sleep. And there are techniques to help you with sleeping. One of them is the minute you wake up to expose your eyes to natural light. So if you wake up, like if you go outside for about 5-10 minutes, depending if it's sunny or cloudy, and expose your eyes to natural light right away. And then when you're going to bed, if you can just turn all your devices off or wear blue light blocking glasses, so you won't, because our genes are not used to, our microbiome, our genes are not used to blue light, and that disturbs your sleep. So there are techniques that you can do to help you sleep better. And then, I need to talk about toxins. So if you can go back. Yeah, and then the last one, especially in the past 2-3 years, with all of us using so many hand sanitizer and antibacterial soaps, that can affect our microbiome hugely. If you use hand sanitizer or antibacterial soap, often that kills off the good bacteria. Your skin is your largest organ, so everything gets absorbed and goes into your bloodstream. So that's something to be cognizant about. And plastic and PFAS, and we're bombarded with toxins. So that's something to be conscious about and try to use less on a daily basis, make a habit of it. Okay, so we talked about microbiome. How would you know you have a balanced microbiome? How would you know if you have your bacteria, your good bacteria and bad bacteria are imbalanced, or you don't have dysbiosis? Well, these are some of the signs. If you feel bloated after eating normal, amount of food, if you're fatigued, if you have low energy, if you have diarrhea, if you have skin issues, if you have unexplained weight gain, brain fog, joint pain, skin rashes, those are all signs of dysbiosis. And those are all signs of dysbiosis. And let me talk about your bowel movements. Like if you're supposed to have a bowel movement at least once a day, but ideally 2 to 3 times a day. It's supposed to be formed. The color needs to be some shade of brown, unless you're eating a lot of vegetables, which is in that case it'll be green. Or if you eat a lot of beets, it can be red. But in general, it needs to be brown, formed, and you need to have a bowel movement at least 2 or 3 times a day. Now, when you're having your bowel movement, you shouldn't feel any pain. You shouldn't have to strain. If you're doing any of that, that means there is dysbiosis in your microbiome. Your bowel movement shouldn't stick to the toilet. It should not be mucousy. It should not be pebble-like. And it should not, and if you're going 2 or 3 times a day, but you feel like you haven't completely emptied your system, that's still considered constipation, which means a dysbiosis in your symptoms. So those are some of the things to watch out for and make sure that, you're not dealing with that. So now you have dysbiosis. What do you do? If you have any of those symptoms and you have dysbiosis, what do you do? This is what I do with my clients. The first step is that I try to identify the root cause and to remove the irritants. The irritant can be food, it can be chemicals, it can be mold, it can be toxin, it can include a lot of stuff. So you remove that. Then I try to, with my client, repair through an elimination diet. Make sure that the junctions in your colon and your intestine is very, very tight. That food can go through and get into your bloodstream, because that's when the problems start. And then the last step is reinoculate. So that I do that through supplements, probiotics, zinc, glutamine, vitamin A, vitamin D, and hopefully that usually takes a long time. It takes between 12 to 18 months to heal a gut that's having issues, because the issue then haven't happened overnight. So the treatment won't happen overnight. So you just have to be patient, and sometimes it takes trial and errors, because what works for one person may not work for others. So you just have to be very, very patient during this time. But it's doable, it's completely doable. So let me ask you guys a question. Do you all know the difference between prebiotic, probiotics, and postbiotics? Okay. So let's talk about them. I know most people probably have heard of probiotics, but what prebiotics to me are the most important step when considering gut health. Prebiotics are the food that you give to the bacteria in your stomach, and that includes fiber. Some of the good sources of prebiotics are bananas and artichokes and onions and garlic and asparagus. So those are prebiotics. To me, that's the most important P in gut health. The second P in gut health is probiotics. Probiotics are what you take. It's the bacteria in your gut. So it's the little capsule that you take. Those are probiotics. And you can also get it from yogurt and cottage cheese and sauerkraut and kimchi. You have to keep in mind, like in the less industrialized area, people have about 1,000 species of different probiotics. In the US, we're lucky if we have 100. Most people have 100 different strains. Now, the probiotic capsule that are on the market, there are only 20 types of strain on the market. So it's best to give the probiotics that you have in your gut the food they need to make that garden grow. Now, if you've been taking a lot of antibiotics, or if your probiotics are completely off, then yeah, take some probiotics. But in general, I like to feed whatever we have there to grow the garden and our gut that way. Now, what are postbiotics? Postbiotics are the metabolites that are made by the beneficial bacteria in our gut. And they do everything for us. The postbiotics do everything. Every function, hormones, every function in your body is done by postbiotics. Now, the most famous postbiotics is butyrate. Postbiotics are short-chain fatty acid, and the most famous one is butyrate. Now, I know sometimes doctors prescribe butyrate. In some extreme cases, I like that, but unless you test it and make sure that the ratio is correct, I'm not sure if that's the best route to take, because if you have a lot of butyrate, but not as much of the other short-chain fatty acid, you throw the ratio off and you have an imbalance again. So, those are the short, but in general, postbiotics are very, very beneficial. If you give your probiotics the food that they need, which is fiber, you get great postbiotics. Now, polyphenols are my favorite of all the P's. Polyphenols, there's a lot of exciting research in this field right now. Polyphenols are the bioactive ingredients of the fruits and vegetables you're eating. So it's what gives the fruit and the vegetables their colors. It's like the sulforaphane in broccoli, the ellagic acid in pomegranate, what makes blueberries blue and carrots orange. How they work with our DNA, with human DNA, to modulate our immune system. So the more of those you have, the better it is for your gut. Now, American Gut Project is the biggest research that has been done on in the US on Americans. And they noticed that the people that had the best guts and most immunity, they had at least 6 servings of probiotics daily. That was yogurt, kefir or kefir, cheeses, sauerkraut, kimchi, and they had at least 30 diverse plants and within a week. And that's really easy to take because that includes fruits and vegetables and spices and teas and legumes and beans and nuts and seeds. Like today, I probably had 30 in one day. So it's really easy to incorporate it in your food. Some people find that a little daunting if you're not eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. Most Americans, 2/3 of our calories come from 3 crops: soy, wheat, and corn. So most of our food comes from those 3 crops. So it's harder for some people to incorporate that much in your diet, but it's doable. Just start where you are. If you're having 3 a week, just have a goal of, okay, this week I'm gonna have 7, and then just try to increase your goal slowly, but that's very beneficial for your gut health. And then I'm gonna touch lightly on the gut-brain connection. There is a bidirectional gut-brain connection through different modality, but especially the vagus nerve. Most of the serotonin in your body is actually made in your gut, not your brain. 60% of your immune cells are in your gut. And depression is the leading cause of disability in the US, which was surprising to me. I didn't know that was the cause of, but depression is the cause of disability in US. And just this week, research was published that we used to think that depression is caused by chemical imbalance in our brains, but just this week, it was published that it's caused, the most leading cause of depression is inflammation in the brain and in the body. And there is a direct link between your gut microbiome and the inflammation in your body. If there is a dysbiosis in your gut microbiome, you're sure to have inflammation. And that can cause depression, anxiety, and all sort of other mental disorders. Now, a lot of leading research universities are using nutrition therapy. I've been following the work of a doctor at Harvard, Dr. Uma Naidu, and she actually had an article a couple of weeks ago called Psychobiotics, how she uses nutrition to take the gut inflammation down, and in turn, it helps depression and anxiety. So that's a very exciting field. I have been following that for a while, but I'm so glad that it's becoming more mainstream. Now, this was published recently, but it was actually taken from 2018. It shows the health expenditure per capita in the US and other countries and the life expectancy. As you can see, the US, we use the most money on healthcare, and yet we have the lowest life expectancy. And this is before COVID, and it has even gone worse after COVID. So we need to ask ourselves why. Why is this happening? Why is the money that we're spending on healthcare is not working? It's not helping people. Luckily, there's starting to be a paradigm shift where the patients are treated as whole and not as parts, which is something that I've been doing for a long time, and I'm glad that it's becoming more mainstream. So I just wanted you to have a snapshot of this picture and ask yourself, why is this happening? Why is the treatment that we're doing right now not working? But in general, you can all see that how important your gut health is pretty much affects everything else in your body. So I'm gonna, if you guys have any questions, or if people have any questions, you can put your questions in the chat. And I'm also, and I understand that some of these questions are more private. So if you can leave a link to my calendar, I've opened up some spots for 15-minute sessions that it's completely complimentary. And if you have any questions that you don't feel comfortable asking, you can make an appointment and I can discuss it with you on the phone. But if you have any questions, guys, just feel free to ask. Yes.
What is your business? Do you consult patients on this issue?
Yes, that's what I do. I actually consult with patients. I help people with digestive issues. I put them on a program. I have a 10-week program, and I try to work with them in healing their gut. Yeah.
So you mentioned soy, wheat,
and corn.
good for the system.
They're not.
Oh, they're not.
They're not good for the system. No, they're actually really bad for the system. No, they're awful. 2/3, I was saying 2/3 of our calories, the people in the US, comes from those 3 crops. So no, that's not good. Having diversity in your diet is something that you should strive for. Yeah.
Is too much fiber in your diet also not good?
Too much fat?
Too much fiber.
Too much fiber. Okay, so that's a really good question. Fiber is good unless you're suffering, you're having a flare up. Then obviously you need to go back to, having not as much fiber. But the goal should always be to increase your fiber, to have food freedom. So when you're going through a flare up, yeah, you have to go back and follow a low, I'm not sure what kind of diet you do follow, but the goal should be to increase your fiber, because if you don't give your good bacteria the fiber they need, they starve. And the long-term goal is to make sure they're healthy. So as soon as you can, you should introduce fiber into your diet. So when you're having stomach issues, when you're having severe diarrhea, as soon as you eat something, if you're having severe diarrhea, bloating, that's, in pain. So that's when you should go back to cutting fiber out, but you need to start increasing your fiber as soon as possible, because you don't want your good bacteria, they rely on the fiber that you give them.
What about drinking, like alcohol, wine, beer?
Beer is not good. Obviously, obviously, in general, alcohol is not great, but I follow the 80-20%. I mean, if you're not having it every day, if you're just drinking, occasionally, socially on the weekend, because you also need to live. You need to have a pragmatic view of, so it's not the best for you, but it's something that, people do socially. So.
During a fiber, you recommend juicing during that?
I don't, because juicing vegetables, yeah, it could be better, but it could be okay. But juicing fruits that has a lot of sugar and it spikes up your insulin level, it feeds the bad bacteria. So I don't recommend that.
What is your recommendation?
Well, it depends what, like if you're having like a low fiber diet, and then probably a lot of bone broths, homemade bone broths, just collagen, just to make sure that you're getting over the hump. And then slowly introducing vegetables and fruits, but like if you can cook them, so it's not as fibrous, but you're still getting some fiber, and adding them very, very slowly and systematically into your diet. But bone broth really helps during flare-ups and collagen. Well, I don't eat gluten. Some people don't respond well to gluten. I think the way wheat is grown now, it's not the wheat that our ancestors used to have. It's hybrid wheat, and they add a lot of glyphosate to it, which is toxin. So if you can't avoid gluten, I would, or if you can avoid it, 90% of the time and only have it occasionally, I would. I don't think gluten here. I have a client that cannot have gluten here at all in the US, but when he goes to Europe, he can't have gluten there because it's it's harvested differently. They don't use glyphosate. A lot of the countries have banned glyphosate, but we have glyphosate on everything here. So glyphosate, it's not just on wheat, it's on a lot of stuff. So if organic legumes and oats and all that is accessible to you, I would recommend that, because almost everything is sprayed with glyphosate. So.
You were talking about the yogurts are good enough things, and I would have liked to eat a lot of yogurt. But usually, if you go to the doctor and they remove something, the first thing that they remove
is dairy. Yeah. Okay, well, there are different kinds of yogurts. You can have coconut yogurt. You can have goat yogurt. It's easier on stomach. You can have heirloom cow yogurt. It's called A2, like letter A and number 2 yogurt. It's from heirloom cows, and that can be easier on your stomach. So you can play with it. Some people cannot tolerate dairy at all. I think that's very, very bio-individual. But if you can have goat yogurt and not show a reaction, why not? I think these things, that's why if it's accessible to you, it's good to work with a healthcare practitioner. You can't just, except for gluten, it's hard to just eliminate, dairy from your life. If you're not showing reaction to it, why eliminate it? But if you're showing reaction to it, yeah, some people just cannot handle the casein, which is the main protein in dairy. But if you can handle it, like goat yogurt or A2, cow A2 yogurt would be okay.
How about the Greek yogurt?
If you can handle it,
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can handle it, it's fine. Just make sure it's the one that have probiotics in them. Some yogurts if it doesn't say live cultures, it doesn't have probiotics. So just make sure that it has, live cultures. Yeah. Like I have put pickles up there, but not all pickles are fermented. So just make sure if you're eating it because it has probiotics, that it does have probiotics, that it has live cultures and bacteria. And
For people with less than optimal diets, do you have clients that you recommend a daily probiotic and a daily fiber pill?
I don't recommend fiber pill. I think that you should try to incorporate fiber into your diet because like I know one of my clients would take Metamucil, and yeah, it does help you go to the bathroom easier, but it doesn't do much for to feed your good gut bacteria. So I don't recommend fiber pills at all. I do recommend probiotics, but that's very by individual as well. It's because like if you're having a general probiotic, you just it's easier. But if you're having diarrhea versus if you're having constipation, the probiotic that you take is different. So it just depends on what your needs are. And with probiotics, I usually tell my clients that it's trial and error. Like think about what symptoms is bothering you. And if you take the probiotic, does it make it worse or better? Everything is by individual. So, but if you can take your probiotics from the actual food, or better yet, prebiotics, to feed the probiotics that you already have, the bacteria that you already have, that's what I recommend the most.
What about prunes? They do feed good bacteria, or they are like also.
Are you talking about the fruit or the dried? The prunes, dry prunes. Okay, so I don't recommend dried fruit because it's got very high sugar content. So if you can eat the plum, it's probably better than the prune because it's got anything dry, any fruit that's dry, it's got a high sugar content. So
Doctors always recommend eating fruits. You are saying you should not eat fruit.
no, you should eat fruits, but when it's whole fruits, like a plum, but a prune, it's a dry fruit. So when they're dehydrated, the fiber is out and all you get is sugar. So I say, no, fruits and vegetables you should have, but prune is a dry fruit. So I don't think you should have dry fruits if you can avoid it. Yes.
Do you recommend something particular?
Fruits and vegetables, if you can buy organic, buy organic. If you can't buy organic, the second one is, are you familiar with Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen? Okay, so for those of you, are you familiar with? So for those of you who are not familiar with it, the EWG, Environmental Working Group, publishes a list every year that tells you which fruit is best to eat organic and which is okay not to eat organic. So if you can buy those organic, like berries, strawberries, and all that, it's probably best. If that's not accessible, then you can wash them with water and vinegar, 1 part vinegar, 4 parts water, depending on how much fruit you have, you can gauge it, and leave it in there for 20 minutes and then just rinse it off. And that takes care of a lot of the pesticides, most of the pesticides. So, yeah.
For polyphenols, you told that tannins are good. And how about the turmeric?
Oh, it's great.
Turmeric every day.
I take turmeric
The
pill.
turmeric powder.
Yeah. Okay. I use turmeric powder in cooking every single day. Every single, and I don't use this much. I use spoonful of turmeric.
I would always take 1 tablespoon of turmeric powder in the hot water.
Yeah. Yeah.
I put half lemon in it. And also, I use ginger. in it.
Yes, yes.
That mixture I every day take. I feel better than with that.
That's a great mixture. You just have to keep in mind that turmeric in the powder form is not very bioavailable, so your cells can't use it rapidly. Make sure to use a little bit of black powder to make it more bioavailable. That's the only thing, because the turmeric pills that I take are in nano forms, so they're very bioavailable.
Normally powder is made out from the dried turmeric
Yeah.
and they crush it and make it totally down.
Yes. I take that every
I'm talking about that turmeric.
Yes. But on a cellular level, turmeric in general is not very bioavailable. So you have to use it. I'm not sure if that's what you do in cooking. You have to use it with black pepper to make it more bioavailable to you. Yes. Yeah. To make it.
To grind it into
Yes.
your stuff.
Yeah, you have to, like, by bioavailability. Thank you so much. By bioavailability, I mean that it gets into your bloodstream but cannot get into your cells. So your cell can use it. In order for your cell to be able to use it, you have to make it bioavailable to the cells, and you can do that by using black pepper. Well, I don't know the exact ratio, but you can, yeah, because just use a little bit of black pepper. I don't think the science is exact on that. And then there are a lot of pills that that are more bioavailable, that are turmeric pills and more bioavailable. Yeah. Any more questions?
Omega-3,
Yes.
is that good for,
Man, omega-3 is my God. I think everybody, no matter what, should take omega-3.
even though you might have fish out? I have fish out.
Oh,
But
well,
I think it's just fresh water.
well, you can, so when you take it, do you have allergy to it?
No, well, I'm avoiding omega-3 for all my life. It's not fish out.
Well, there are types that you can take that are from algae. I'm not sure the exact company that makes it, but you can make the ones that are made from algae that you can take. And also you can take other forms of omega-3, like flax seeds and chia seeds. It's not as bioavailable, the conversion, because it's a different kind of omega-3. So the conversion is not as good, but you can also take flax seeds and chia seeds and all that. They have a lot of omega-3, ALA.
I think a vegan omega-3. So if you
Where
like
do you buy it?
Amazon.
Amazon?
Yeah. I never can't remember if it's something that I but
Yeah, and it's becoming more popular because yeah, and they're becoming more popular because not because people have fish allergies, but because some people just don't, are vegans. So yeah, but that's something that I think there are only a couple of supplements that I think everyone should take, and omega-3 is one of them. I think everyone should take that. Yeah.
My mother is a high BP patient and they always say don't get too much salt. But I also heard that we need salt for lunch. But have a good no constipation.
Yeah.
Is it true or
What does your mom have?
high blood pressure?
High blood pressure. Well, I can't give any medical advice. So what I'm telling you is not in regards to your mom. It's my experience. A little bit of salt, especially if it's sea salt. What affects blood pressure more than salt is a high carb diet, so it's better if she lowers her sugar and her carbs and have a little bit of sea salt. It's fine. Because what causes blood pressure It's mostly carbohydrates. But again, I'm not a doctor, and what I'm telling you is just my own experience, and I'm not saying that. Yeah, in general.
Salt is needed for nutrition.
Salt is a mineral that's needed for the body. So every time I drink water, I add a little bit of salt to it and some lemon juice, because it just, for hydration, you need the water to get inside of your cells. So I do add just a tiny bit of salt and a little bit of lemon to my water. So
Ice cream. Ice cream good or bad?
ice cream, well, ice cream has a lot of sugar, and it also has emulsifiers. It has a lot of gums, which kills your, bad bacteria. So if you're having it once a month, yeah, but I definitely would not recommend it.
Daily consumption of ice cream.
No, that's, I just like, no, they definitely not daily, yeah. Because not only it has a lot of sugar, it has gum and emulsifiers, and that just kills your gut microbiome.
Lots of people were curious about your recommendations for daily fiber intake.
About 25, at least 25 grams for women and 35 grams for men. And those are at least.
What are the signs that you have inflammation? How do you know if you have inflammation or leaky gut or things like that?
Well, do you want to put the sign back up? So bloating, acne, skin rashes, joint pain, unexplained weight gain, brain fog, diarrhea, those are signs of leaky gut. Now with inflammation, it shows up differently. Like if you have joint pain, or if you have skin rashes, or if you have weight gain, those are signs of inflammation.
Do tomatoes cause inflammation?
Okay, so tomatoes, it's a nightshade. So the lectin can cause inflammation in some people, not everyone. Tomatoes are great for you. It's a good source of lycopene, which is a great polyphenol. But in some people who are allergic to nightshade, it can cause bad inflammation. So it's very by individual. But people who are allergic to tomato are usually allergic to bell peppers, goji berries, eggplants. So yeah.
What are some strategies for rebuilding the gut biome if you've depleted it via things like years of antibiotics or acid reflux drugs?
Yeah, so what I talked about, if you can remove the irritant, if you can work with a healthcare professional and know what if you're still having anything that's irritable, if you can remove that, and then you can repair it via elimination diet and starting adding things slowly, and then a lot of supplements that I said there. It takes a long time though. It takes about 12 to 18 months, and you just have to be patient with the process.
Do you have opinions on consuming dates?
Again, it's got fiber, but it's also high in sugar. So if you're having it once a week or twice a week, it's fine. If you're adding it to your shake when you're also having a lot of fiber and protein, so the sugar is not absorbed quickly, it's fine. My motto is anything in moderation, but not having 2 or 3 dates a day. No, that's not good for you. But if you're having it in moderation and you know when to eat it, how to eat it, it's got a lot of fiber.
Do you have any favorite brands or strains of probiotics for overall health?
varies by individual, but in general, I use Thorn probiotics. They have 3 or 4 different probiotics. The company is called Thorn, and they can go on my website and see the ones that I recommend. That's the company that I recommend, and there are 3 or 4 different ones, and it states that which is good for what, so they can decide.
Okay, and your website is?
Healthwithsara.com.
Okay. Do you have a beginner book that you recommend people that want to learn more about gut health?
A beginner book. No, but if that person emails me, I can look for one. I'm not sure about a beginner book, so I'm not sure how beginner they're talking about, but if that person emails me, my email is on my website, or Sara@healthwithsara.com. I'll definitely send them a list. Yeah, thank God. I mean, like this week, the report this week, I'm so glad that was finally published. I've been researching that for years about the relationship between gut inflammation and depression and anxiety. And I'm so glad that was published. I'm so glad that it's becoming more mainstream, where people are learning about the different the effects of gut health on your mind. Even schizophrenia or bipolar disorders. There was I talked about this on one of my other talks where they took this was a study done in mice. Of course, they can't do this in human, but they took the fecal matters of a schizophrenic human, and they gave it to a mouse, and then the other mouse got the normal people, and then they brought scientists in. Then they were able to determine which mouse had schizophrenia and which mouse got the normal.
So that's what she did. It took some pieces from the normal.
Yes. Yeah, that's not FDA approved yet, but I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard about cases like that. Actually, I read a case like that in Spain too, where they've done that. I haven't taken that leap, but it's something that, it's a you have to really know the other person, because everything that they have heart disease, whatever that's in their genes gets transported. So you have to make sure, right now it is being used in the US, but only for C. diff, patients who have C. diff. There's a lab in Boston that does the transplant, but it's only approved for patients with C. diff. So, but nothing else, but yeah. Well, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you found it helpful.